Rattlesnake Hill provides one of the best vantage points in all of racing. You look down on the entire Phoenix International Raceway complex. The saguaro cactus, that one is probably 200 or more years old. Temperature struggling to hit 70, but the sun has been baking this racetrack. So track temperatures are high, and that means that speeds will likely be down from the opening round of practice. So welcome to final practice at Phoenix International Raceway. Mike Joy, Larry McReynolds, Darrell Waltrip with you once again. In this kind of topsy-turvy weekend, we've had first practice, 2 hours of that. Now we're going to get an hour and a half of final practice, and then we're going to qualify. So what are you up to now that the track's all nice and hot and greasy and you're slip sliding around?
But there's still a lot of things you can do. I mean, that little timeout right there, you know, halftime, you can go in the truck and you can look at the information you have from the races you've run here before, conditions. You look at what happened here a year ago. Was it 80 degrees in? What do we do then that will relate to what we're doing now? So it's a good thing to have that break in there. I would prefer to have practice, qualifying, and practice. Then I can get my car right for the race, but that's not what we're doing, so it doesn't make any difference. But that's the way I wish it was.
And that's the real challenge in this hour and a half practice that's left, and especially if you're one of those 13 go or go home cars. Yeah, your first race is to get in the race, and if you go back to a normal race weekend, if you got in the race, you still had a couple of practices to get your car ready to race. Here, once they qualify these cars, it's not an impound. They'll be able to go back to the garage area and work on them, but that will be it once they qualify until the green flag drops tomorrow night.
All right, now we're not going to remind him that it's been a whole year since he last won a pole, but the man who won the pole for this race last year is with Matt Yoakum.
Mike, as Dale Earnhardt Jr. is getting ready to pull back out, you heard his car fire up, and you know, being the statistician that he is and the numbers guy because he's an engineering graduate of Purdue, it has been a year since you last won a pole.
Yeah, you reminded me of that. Yeah, thankfully. We were close, if close matters at Bristol, but it has been a year, and it's tough. When you're supposed to, when everybody expects you to win one, it's tough with going for a year, but we got a good shot today.
12th in practice. When you look at the history here at PIR, you had so much success in an open wheel car, never won though, and you finished second to who?
Finished second to Stewart, and then Brian Tyler in the same day, midget, and then Silver Crown car back in '99. So I've been a bridesmaid a couple times here. It's a great racetrack. It's a lot of fun. I guess I got to talk to Schrader or somebody. He's got the secret of winning all the races here, so see what we can do.
Well, Ryan Newman, I'm sure he'll be in a lot of open wheel Hall of Fames later in his career, but there's a guy who's already in the National Sprint Car Hall of Fame. He's across the garage, Dr. Dirt, the editor of Speedway Illustrated, Dick Berggren.
Well, thank you, Matty. And I am in the garage of the winningest NASCAR driver in 2009. Kyle Busch has racked up a total of 8 checkered flags, 8 trophies this year, twice in Sprint Cup point races, once in a qualifying race at Daytona, once in a race that happened even before anybody else went to Daytona, Super Late Models in Georgia, twice in the Truck Series, twice in the Nationwide Series. And he's led 1,668 laps so far in the top 3 series in NASCAR. But he's not had a good time here so far at Phoenix. He's only 19 on the speed chart, and they're going to be working on grip. He doesn't have enough grip in that race car, so they've made significant changes to it, both front and back, trying to find some more speed for Kyle Busch so he can collect yet one more trophy.
And Darrell, I've got to believe one thing that teams will be working with a lot in the last practice and coming up in this practice is the shock package. You made note in that first practice how bumpy this place is, and there's a lot of grip that can be gained or lost simply with the 4 shock absorbers.
Yeah, and a shock, I never thought I'd see the day when shocks would be so complicated. But I mean, they do more things with shocks than they do with springs and sway bars. That's what controls the grip of these cars. Planting the tires to the ground and being able to apply 850 horsepower, you got to have the right shock package. That's one thing that 18 and the whole Gibbs crowd have it going for them. Is a guy down there named Ronnie Crooks, Doctor Who. And if you see Doctor Who, there's more things going on in that head than probably anybody else is in the garage area.
He is a smart man.
Carl Edwards trying to get his season back on track. He was in position to win at Texas 2 weeks ago. Problems on the final pit stop dropped him from the lead to mid-pack. But right now he is 6th in the opening laps of this session.
And I think this 99 team, Carl Edwards and Bob Osborne, is a prime example of what can happen from one part of the year to the next or from one year to the next. If you go back last year, they were wearing everybody out everywhere we were last year. They won a total of 9 races in 2008. I don't think they're running a bit worse than they did in 2008. They're probably running better. It's just other teams, they have caught up to where the 99 team was when they won all those races last year.
Like Carl Edwards, his teammate Matt Kenseth has had some difficulties this season. He came out strong winning the first 2 races, but since then it's like their season has just got untracked.
Well, you know, Larry, a little bit following up on what you were saying about the 99 car. It kind of recalls the days to me. I remember Harry Gant and Leo Jackson. Harry Gant went on a string of winning 4 races in a row. And when none of us could figure out what the heck are they doing. But they were doing something, and we finally all figured it out. They were putting camber. It's when we'd gone to the radial tire, they figured out that putting camber in the right rear tire would make the car turn better and handle better. But they were the first ones to figure it out before the rest of us did it. And you know how we figured it out? They were stopping on a pit stop and greasing the rear axles. They had a Zeus fit and they'd grease the rear axle. We said, why are they doing that for? And it was the camber they were putting in the rear end. Last year, when we noticed Carl Edwards' car going around the track all skewed out, the rear end kicked out, he was the only one doing it. We didn't notice anybody else's car that way. But it didn't take long until when we got to Charlotte a few weeks later, they were really skewed out.
Some to extremes.
And you know, Mike, Todd Barrier and I did an appearance for Napa Auto Parts last night, and the question was proposed to Todd: if you find something, how long can you keep it a secret? And Todd Barrier's response to this group was not long for 2 reasons. One, there's a lot of crew members that know each other in the garage area, and they tend to talk to each other. But he said the biggest thing, and we'll get a shot maybe of this garage area here, is how close you're parked to each other. I mean, you can turn around and look at everything about the front end or the back end of your neighbor's car simply because every garage area we go to, they're stacked on top of each other.
There's just guys down there, Mike, and Larry knows this, that like to walk around with their chest kind of poked out a little bit and say, you won't believe what we're doing.
And how many times back in the day would you walk over to ask somebody how's the wife and kids and walk away knowing what right front spring they were running?
Yep.
Todd Parrott would come over and talk to me. He'd ask me questions about everything about my life, and I guarantee you if I asked him afterwards what answers did I give you, he wouldn't have a clue because he wasn't worried about my life, he was worried about my race car.
Speed's presentation of NASCAR Sprint Cup practice is brought to you by True Value, the tools, products, and expert advice for all your project needs. True Value. Start right, start here.
I think as far as agendas, our Go or Go Homers are really starting to focus in on practice qualifying run.
Wow.
Right now, 3 of the top 4 are Go or Go Homers. Scott Speed, Dave Blaney at the top of the chart. Joe Nemechek back in the 5th position.
That tells me they probably went out with stickers. You know, those guys get a run in now, see where they are, and then what they got, you know, what they're going to have to do to, if they got to get better or not.
34 of our 48 drivers have been on track in the opening laps of this session. Tony Stewart was 3rd in the first practice. Right now he is 11th in this one.
Ran a lot of laps in that last practice. He and his teammate Ryan Newman both did.
See, and if you're working on something, you ended up that last practice and you say, and these engineers, this is their terms, they like to A, B, A things. You A it, then you change it, which is B, and then you decide between the two which one is the best. And sometimes you have to go back to A to verify that B was actually better. So you won't start this practice in qualifying trim until you get that done.
Well, go ahead.
Well, the engineers have a pretty good idea of what's going to be better through simulation programs, but obviously they want to support the feedback from the driver off the racetrack.
Well, we're going to go A/B our pit reporters, starting with Matt.
Down in the 88 garage stall right alongside Ryan Newman, who's still getting in his car because they're working on qualifying stuff from here on out, while Dale Earnhardt Jr. in the 88, they're still working on race trim. They went out, posted a top 10 time. Junior said the car turned extremely well, and he was very pleased in how it rolled through the center of the corner. They brought the car in, and just like DW, Mike and Larry talked about, A-B'ing things. They put in another shock package in the back of the car, going back out to see how this reacts, and then they'll make a decision on if they want to try one more thing and then swap over to their qualifying setup. That's the game plan, the agenda in this final practice down in the 88 garage.
Because the human element, the driver, comes into play. When you do something to the car and he goes out and you run faster on the clock, but he says, I didn't like the way that felt. So then you've got to make the determination, you know, do we go with what the driver says or do we go with what the stopwatch says? And that's where simulation and data come in. Because they may tell the driver, you need to learn to drive it this way because this is going to be the best.
And some drivers you can tell that too.
Exactly.
And some, it's a tough sell.
And you know, Mike, I do the NASCAR Performance Show with Chad Knaus and Doug Richard, who's going to join us this week, and it airs tomorrow at 4:30 p.m. Eastern. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about on this show, is evaluating your qualifying practice run versus race runs. Qualifying, it doesn't matter. What's the stopwatch show me? Race runs, long green runs, yeah, you still watch the stopwatch, but what is that driver telling me about the comfort level?
Well, I think that's where that you have to have that anticipation. How many times has a driver been to this racetrack? And I guarantee you, you go back and pull your notebook out, and if you look at the last 5 or 6 years that you come here, you could lay notes from one year to the next. Driver comments 1 year to the next over the top of each other. Oh, a little loose in, a little tight off. A little loose in, a little tight off. That's all you hear. So you want to come with something that, you know, you're going to look at that information and try to determine what to do with what he told you.
You know, Jimmy Johnson won our first practice, and I'm looking at the chart, Dick Berger, and I'm not seeing his name.
The reason you're not seeing his name is that Jimmy is just getting ready to climb into the car now, Mike. They have been working on the static weight distribution of this car for quite a while. The mechanics put wrenches in the back window. They've also got the hood up, and they put wrenches there, and they wind down on springs and they lift up on springs. And that's to get the weight distribution that they want on each of the 4 wheels, so that when the car goes through the corner and some of the weight transfers to the right side, there's still enough weight on the wheels as they want it on the left side. But doing that also changes the ride height of the car. So it's kind of a balancing act, trying to figure out what you need for ride height, what you need for weight distribution. Car is on scales now, and that's what they've been working on.
If I was a betting man, if I know Chad Knaus like I think I know Chad Knaus, and this was one of the big subjects coming into this modified impound schedule, I'd be willing to bet in that first practice all they focused on was their race setup. I think because this practice is a shorter practice, it's much closer to qualifying, I'd be willing to bet what they're doing is going into full qualifying mode right here for this run coming up.
Yeah, like you said, Larry, the nose weight. You're going to put nose weight on it, and that's what they've been doing, getting that nose weight right on the money.
Scott Speed and Dave Blaney are fastest in this practice so far. Stay up late tonight on Speed, midnight Eastern time. Martin Truex, David Stremme making a memorable trackside here in the desert. Midnight Eastern, be there, Speed.
Yeah. Pretty excited about Martin being on the show tonight because he's been running good today,
He's
man.
flying.
He's second in the first practice, and here he is fifth in this practice.
Guess who just jumped up to the top of the board?
Man hasn't sat on a pole in a year, right?
That would be the Rocket. Ryan Newman, second fastest.
Well, that's good news and bad news. The bad news is hadn't very many people made qualifying runs yet.
Come on.
I'm thinking.
Okay.
Let's see where that ends up. If they right now, that's a 27.72 fast by Scott Speed. I got to believe the times are going to be down in the 27, 20s, and 30s. Maybe just a little later this afternoon.
Yeah, the go or go homers going at the end of that qualifying session. That'll definitely be optimum, I think, track conditions as far as that session for those guys. Brian Vickers,
seventh now.
Yep.
And probably the one thing that makes the car run better, that would give you a better lap time around this joint, is not necessarily shocks and springs. It's those fluids. When they lower the levels in the transmissions and all the things they can do, and they can fix that after qualifying. So that's where you're going to get that extra speed from. The tune-up, the old qualifying tune-up will make the difference today.
I correct myself. Vickers is 6th fastest. Jeff Burton is 7th. And Joey Logano coming off a big win in Tennessee. That would be Nashville, Tennessee last week. Joey's 34th right now.
Yeah, and I want to send out our best wishes to everybody in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, who got hit by those tornadoes over there last weekend, and particularly to the family. There was a mom and a little 9-month-old baby that lost their life, and I don't have their name in front of me, but I know that the husband is in the hospital, and I want to say hello to him and wish that whole crowd over there in Murfreesboro a speedy recovery to all the damage.
Yeah, bad weekend for tornadoes through Middle Tennessee.
It was.
I think we're definitely starting to see some of our guys make practice qualifying runs now. Mark Martin in the 5 car, he goes to the top of the charts to a 27.64.
Now that, when Mark Martin puts a time up, that's one you might want to keep an eye on, because so far in the last 3 or 4 weeks, he has led practice going into qualifying.
And 2 of those weeks, didn't he end up on the pole?
He ended up on the pole, yeah. So that's a 64. That's almost a 10th quicker than Scott Speed's 72 there. So that's a time to keep an eye on.
I think this is Jamie Mack's 2nd run. He is 18th on the chart. He's run 8 laps in this session.
You see all the damage on the right side of that car. He spent most of that first practice in the garage area because 4 laps into that first practice, he got into some oil down in turn 3 and 4 and got up against the wall.
I think we later learned that oil was from Scott Speed's car, and it gave us a pretty extended red flag period while they cleaned it all up.
Now, he was one of the guys that did the tire test back in January, and was Martin one of the guys?
Truex Jr., Joey Logano, and A.J. Allmendinger. They bring essentially, if you look at those 4 drivers, it's 4 different makes, which is what Goodyear tries to do at all the different tire tests.
Well, it looks like the one that benefited from that certainly has been Martin Truex. Up there in the top 4 or 5 both practices.
So the top 6 spots, 3 drivers who are locked into the show and 3 go or go homers. It's less than 30 days away.
29 days away. That's less than 30.
To be precise, that's
less than 30.
Less than 29 is 19. That's the number on Elliott Sadler's car, and his position 24. Right now, he's run 11 laps in this session.
This is our first Saturday night race of 2009, and when you really think about it, 4 of our next 5 races, including here, are Saturday night races. Richmond in a couple of weeks, and we move on to Darlington, and then the All-Star race under the lights. And of course, the Coca-Cola 600 is a night race. It's just on Sunday night.
I'm pretty jacked up to get to Darlington again. I mean, it's the Southern 500. I know it's name only, and it would be the Rebel 500 in our day. But nonetheless, they got the name back.
Yes.
And they got a great new trophy that's going to have all the winners of the Southern 500 on the trophy.
Wow, that's going to be heavy.
It's going to be pretty cool to see. So I like what Chris Brown and those guys down there. They keep going and keep working on that place. The little thing that we did there in last September.
Yeah, the Legends
the
reunion.
Vintage car race, or whatever you want to call it. It's like Goodwood to a little degree.
And what name is by the 92 Southern 500? That's a whole nother story.
And what name could have been.
All right.
How come is it we always remember the ones that we lost? You can't remember the ones you win.
I can't explain that, but we only have an hour. Dick Berggren.
And the one that Carl Edwards is going to remember for sure is one he lost was 2 weeks ago at Texas, where he went into the pits leading and came out 11th when the lug nuts didn't come off the wheels the way they were supposed to. So at this point, one tire changer has been changed, but other than that, they've got exactly the same pit crew that will go over the wall on Saturday night for Carl Edwards. And the poor guy, you wonder how he can manage to keep a smile smile on his face, because even last week in the nationwide race, he wound up having problems on pit road. They didn't get all of the lug nuts tight. He went in leading, came out in good shape, but had to re-pit on the next caution flag and had to restart way in the back. Carl said that the real problems that they have struggled with this year on the Cup car, the 99 car, is they have had a spate of crew member injuries. So they've had to move some people around and move some new people in. And he told me moments ago that he hopes now they've got exactly the right formula. No more pit road problems for Carl Edwards.
Yeah.
So they hope.
Yeah. Sure hope not, Dick. I mean, gosh, look, that race 2 weeks ago was one Carl's not going to forget for a while. He came into the pits leading on this last stop, and watch the front tire changer.
This was with 30 laps to go. This was that very last caution that we had.
Yeah, and he'd just driven up and taken the lead from Jeff Gordon, who was pretty dominant. And if you can see there, he's very disgusted. But you know what? Carl needs to tell his crew the same thing Tony Stewart told his at Texas. Don't be spectacular.
Just slow down.
Slow down. I'd rather do 14 seconds, 14 and a half, and I had to come back to pit road.
But I do really like what Carl said in his post-race comments. And it shows I think a level of maturity and appreciation that is lacking in some parts of the garage. Carl said, I can't get down on my team. He said, they don't yell at me when I put one in the wall. I'm not going to take them to task when there's a mistake. And that's a great attitude. Yeah. You know, and then you go behind closed doors, you talk it through, you make changes if needed. They did. And we'll see how it turns out.
If you've never been on a team where you rely on other people to make you look good, or when other people rely on you to make them look good, then you may say things that you regret, or you may may bust on somebody when you shouldn't have. But when you've been on a team and you know that it could be you next time, just think about Carl at Talladega last year. I mean, I didn't hear the team get down on him.
No.
And so it's that old saying in racing, what goes around comes around.
Casey Kane 41st on the board as Mark Martin is fastest in this final practice.
That year was a very, very special year for us. And in a lot of ways, it was a year that we found kind of our stride and our confidence as a race team. And to win such a big event in dramatic fashion.
Hey, second place. This is now a foursome. Here comes Stewart.
3 wide down the backstretch. Somebody's got to give, boys, and Jimmy Johnson's going to pass them both on the inside.
The All-Star race is a special race, and it certainly was kind of a springboard in a period of time that was really special for the 48 car.
The 2003 winner of the Nextel All-Star Challenge, about to give Hendrick Motorsports its 5th All-Star win. Jimmy Johnson in the Lowe's Chevy wins the Nextel All-Star Challenge. It's his 7th win in a Nextel Cup car at Lowe's Motor Speedway. This is his house. 5-point race wins and now 2 All-Star victories.
It is quite a special event.
Celebrating 25 years of All-Star memories. Don't miss the NASCAR Sprint All-Star Race on Speed, Saturday, May 16th, 7 p.m. Eastern. NASCAR on Speed. Be there.
29 days away. Be there or be right here. Jimmy Johnson is on a roll. Now, how many times in a season will we say that? But in the last 3 races, 3rd at Bristol, the victory at Martinsville, and runner-up at Texas.
And I think, as anticipated, that was a practice qualifying run that he made, but I don't think they're going to be real happy with that. He only ran the 2 laps, and his 2 laps were a 27.78, which puts him 5th quickest. The second lap was a 27.97, so I'm sure they were looking for more in those low 60s, maybe even in the 27.50s.
I was just thinking about that All-Star race. You know why drivers like that race? You make a lot of money in a very short period of time.
This is true.
It's down and dirty, man.
No points, no problem.
No, sir.
And I just think that 10-lap shootout at the end, I think that's what's going to really bring that race back to life and bring some excitement this year.
I know it will, because I always hated it.
And no inversion.
No inversion.
You get what you get.
President of NASCAR, Mike Helton, checking in with the boys there in the Hendrick stables.
He just goes through the garage and checks the pulse of everyone. We got anything going on down here that might need my attention? I just really feel like Mike Hilton is like, he should be the commissioner of racing. This should be what he does right here. Walk around in the garage area, stay in touch with all the competitors, which he does, keep up with what's going on in the sport, and which he does. I mean, these are all the things that he does, but
Yes.
he really is like the commissioner of our sport.
He's just a good down-to-earth guy, though. I mean, you can talk to him about anything.
He understands, Larry. I mean, the two things, he's got the best traits you can have. He's got a little Bill France, and he's got a little bit of Mike Helton. And the part about Bill France was you go in there and start trying to sell Mr. France a bill of goods, he knew it right away.
Yeah.
But if you went in and started to sit down and talk to him and you knew you were straight shooting with him, he knew that right away too. And that's the way Mike is, got the best of both worlds.
He can be a very engaging or a very intimidating presence, and
right.
he can turn it on and off at will.
That's right.
Mark Martin leads this practice session. Here's Dick.
Yeah, he does indeed, and he has not won a point-paying Sprint Cup race since 2005. But Mark is ever so good at this racetrack. He just took 2 more laps out on the racetrack with the nose of the car all taped up, and that lap that put him on top of the board, he was all taped up as well. He has got 24 starts here, more than anybody else in this division, and he's got the most top 5s. The one thing he's lacking is a win, and it's been so long. But Mark Martin could well go home with a checkered flag tomorrow night.
He could go home with a pole this afternoon, but for this man and a host of others. But Ryan Newman, last year's pole winner here. Certainly not a lock for the pole. He's in a different brand of car than he ran last year and driving for a different team. But the mission's the same, and Ryan's got a lot of laps on this place. He is 3rd on the speed chart right now.
And he actually has 4 poles here total. He's the track record holder that he set back in 2004. I think that track record is going to be safe because it's about a second faster than what Mark Martin's fastest time is right now.
Our producer Barry Landis favors Martin Truex in this afternoon's qualifying. And Truex has been up near the top of the board.
I've been watching
track open.
I've been watching him, Mike, because he's going to be on our trackside show, and I just kind of wanted to be sure I knew what he was up to today. This car has been awesome ever since they hit the racetrack. It's been fast. I've watched him compared to the competition. I've seen him run by Kyle Busch. I've seen him run by Jimmy Johnson. That car has really been performing awfully well here in practice.
And there's something about 1-mile racetracks that this young fella seems to like.
Yeah, whether they're concrete and banked or asphalt and flat.
That's right.
And I mean, Mike and Darrell, this team, they need something to happen right now. They're sitting 24th in the points. Yeah, they sat on the pole for the Daytona 500. They finished 11th. They finished 10th at Atlanta. But they don't even have another top 20 finish other than those 2 finishes right there. So it's time for this team to start turning the curve and getting this thing in a positive direction.
Well, the saddest fact, I think, is that right there is all that's left of DEI in the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series. They've merged with Ganassi. They still carry the Earnhardt E, those strakes down the side. But Martin Truex Jr. is carrying the flag for what once was a very great racing organization.
They sort of ran out of mergers. You know, they merged with Bobby Ginn, and then that didn't work out so hot. So then now they've merged with Ganassi, and I don't know, that looks like it might work out all right.
Let's check with Matt.
And Mike, looking at different agendas down in the garage now, Ryan Newman, his team making some small adjustments. The last run, he said it shattered the nose down in 3 and 4, and he slid the nose down in 1 and 2, right alongside the 88 of Dale Earnhardt Jr. We talked about how they were going to switch over to their qualifying setup. That's what they're doing right now. And then a next stall over, the 16 of Greg Biffle. Their team basically working on an agenda of 3 short runs to try to fine-tune the balance, and then 1 bonsai run right near the end. So about every 12 minutes or so, they're looking to get their car back out as Dale Jr. is waiting to get his car out in Q trim.
Tony Stewart is 15th on the board. He's run 23 laps in this session. He was 3rd in the earlier practice.
Just looked like Tony's focused on one thing and one thing only, getting this thing driving good for the long haul.
Speed Radio Weekend Preview with Rob D'Amico every Friday of race week on Fox Sports Radio. NASCAR, ALMS, AMA, F1, MotoGP, more alphabet soup. You can listen to Speed Personalities and SpeedTV.com racing experts. Download the podcast and iTunes or listen online at SpeedTV.com, keyword Speed Radio. There goes the dinger. Now, where's AJ in this practice session? 35th.
He's run a total of 22 laps, so you kind of get a feeling that Sammy Johns and this group, they're still working on race setup. Had a pretty good run here in the fall race of last year, driving for what was then Gillette Evernham Motorsports. Ended up finishing, I think, 16th.
David Stremme just jumped up to 6th on the board, and Robbie Gordon is 24th. Menards and Mappé on the hood of the car. They make equipment for laying tile floors, and they've been with Robbie for a couple of seasons. Robbie has a win here. Came in kart, open wheel racing.
I think it was his very first kart win.
Great. Let's go back down to the garage.
Hey, catching up with Dale Earnhardt Jr. So when you look at both practice sessions today, Junior, what pleases you the most of the performance that you've seen?
Well, we're turning better this year. Down in the corner and rolling the center better. Our lap times have been more competitive. So it's been a good practice for us. I'm pretty happy with how we're running and what we've been able to get the car to do. It's really, I've had some really good cars here, so I know what I'm looking for. It's so frustrating to try to find it and try to get it. And we're getting close. We're going into qualifying trim now, so what it is, what it is. We'll see how we do tomorrow.
Now we're counting down to the All-Star Weekend, and for a long time you've been floating an idea, and they have finally picked it back up, the 10-lap shootout at the end.
Yeah, I mean, nobody gave me any credit for bringing that idea back, but I'm pretty happy about that. I think the fans are going to love it. That way we can really, lay it all out on the line, and nobody can really make it, have any complaints afterwards, no matter what happens, because the $1 million for 10 laps, you're going to have a lot of things happen, and just be ready for the good, the bad, and the ugly.
The E-Ticket Motorsports in May, the All-Star Weekend.
And it should be exciting.
I'll give him credit for bringing it back. How about you?
Absolutely.
Kind of reminds me like the time I called France, and I said, I'd like to know who the dummy was that came up with that idea, and he said, you're talking to him.
Short conversation, wasn't it? Yeah. Dick?
Well, for all the people that boo Kyle Busch, listen up. Tonight, 30 to 35 kids from a camp that he largely funds called Sunshine Acres in Mesa, Arizona, are going to be in a suite to watch the nationwide race. They're going to come back tomorrow as well for the Cup race. These are kids without families that Kyle helps to support, not only here, but in 7 other locations around the United States. It's not just money, it's his time as well. He visited yesterday afternoon, spent a couple of hours with the kids. We have all we could do to get 5 minutes with Kyle Busch, but those kids got 2 hours. He does reach out to those who need help.
We saw a little footage of that, Dick, and I think it's terrific that the drivers in this series and a lot of folks in this series can take what they've accomplished and turn it around and do good for others.
The thing that touched my heart the most was last year when he donated that $100,000 to Sam Martin.
After winning the race in Texas.
That was unbelievable.
Speed coverage of NASCAR Sprint Cup final practice brought to you by Honda Generators. Honda, the power of choice. Tony Stewart has had a close encounter. Take a look at the right rear of his Old Spice Chevy, and you see the lettering buffed off the tire by the barrier there.
If I was a betting man, I'd say that's off turn 2, wouldn't you think?
That's usually the culprit, because you run so close to it when you get up in that high line. And if you're working on a race setup, that's something you're going to really try, is to be able to exit off of turn 2 on the high side. You get a lot of momentum down that back straightaway past a lot of cars.
Now, Jimmy Johnson just ran a qualifying pass. His second of 2 laps was his fastest of the day, and he's within 100th of a second of Mark Martin. So it's Martin and Johnson, Scott Speed, Ryan Newman, Dave Blaney, and Carl Edwards.
I think this man will be trying to climb up the charts as we just interviewed him. This is a practice qualifying run for this 88 car. Right now he's 15th quickest at a 28.05.
You know, we listen carefully to what these drivers say when they climb out of the car, but we also look and listen carefully to the mood they're in. And have you seen Dale Jr. as happy and excited about how his car's running at any point in this season, more so than that interview just a minute ago?
Well, he's at a track he likes. He's at a place he knows he can do good. And I tell you, he knows that that the team is probably working harder right now than they've worked since he's been at Hendrick, trying to get things turned around. So I like the way this car looks. I like the way he's holding the wheel. Let's see what kind of time he puts down.
Boy,
his
he
best of the
jumped
day.
up. Yeah, third quickest to a 27.71, and actually that was his second lap. He went from like a 20.
On tight side, rolling down into the bottom. Get down on entrance to turn one. It's kind of bouncy on the front bump stops. Like the whole car sort of under hard braking, the first hard braking. You slam the car down to the racetrack. It's sort of catapulted back up out of the racetrack. It does a couple bounces before it settles back down into the step.
And I've seen that on almost every car that's fast. Seems like there's a couple of dips down there that the car does move around a little bit. I think I would look at that time that he just ran and not make a lot of changes in that race car, because cars, I don't know, Larry, just see my experience have been, if you're a little tight in your practice qualifying run, you're going to be just about right on your real qualifying run.
Because you're going to step it up a little bit.
Exactly. You're going to try to pick up a little more speed.
All right, 4 of the Fast 5 right now are Hendrick Chevrolet powered. Let's hear from the driver who is the second quickest Dodge at this moment. Here's Dick.
And that would be Kurt Busch for sure. And last year at this racetrack, Kurt had one of the best runs of all during 2008. He started third, finished in the second position, led 60 laps. I want to see how big the smile is on your face. That'll tell me whether this car, which is the same one he had last year, is as good.
It feels like it's as good, but we still need to change with the times. New left side tire, and we've done all the race runs we can possibly do to manage our tires during this run, and now we'll switch into qualifying mode and see what the Miller Lite Dodge has. It sounds like this weekend's just going our way so far, but you never know. You're just always trying to find that little extra, because a little extra will go a long way with these cars.
Well, he's run the car as hard as it'll go. He too has a skinned up right rear corner.
Hey, Dick Berggren.
Yeah.
Hey, I want to ask you something real quick.
Go ahead.
I just watched you interview Kurt Busch. I think you interviewed him roughly about 10 years ago, and he was a little more nervous then than he is right now.
Larry McReynolds remembers the interview that you and I did on the front straightaway here about 10 years ago. That was 1995, I think, wasn't it?
I was 99. 99. So Larry Mack is right with that. We had won the Southwest Tour Championship that day. We ended up in a big steaming pile of heap on the front straightaway, but luckily had a good enough points cushion to win the championship for the Star Nursery car. Craig Hugh, all the guys back in Vegas. This track means a lot to me. It's the first Cup race I ever saw, won the Southwest Tour Championship, and I was able to drive into a victory lane here with a Cup car a few years back. So hopefully we can do it again this weekend. And I'm an honorary deputy in Maricopa County.
I'll keep that in mind in case I get in any trouble with the sheriff.
Yeah, the old sheriff out here is his best friend, I think.
Yeah, that'll help.
What is it, Deputy Joe?
Yeah. Hey, how about Regan Smith, third fastest? Wow. Greg Biffle has jumped up into the top 5. Fastest Ford on track, 27.70. Paul Menard 8th, Carl Edwards 10th, all in Fords. Kevin Harvick 30th right now in the Pennzoil Chevy.
He just was not very happy at all with this 29 car in that first practice session. Said it felt about as bad as his car did at Texas, which was honestly a complete disaster.
I'm at a loss for what's going on here, because his nationwide program going great guns, his truck team top of the board, but right here they seem to struggle with this Sprint Cup car in recent weeks.
Well, I think Darrell hit the nail on the head in our last show. If you're struggling with Kevin Harvick at Phoenix, you've got some work to do. That's because right. He knows how to get around this racetrack.
And whatever they're doing, Larry, he just made a lap and came right back in. I mean, it didn't help him any.
John Andretti 45th on the board. Now he is going to drive all but 2 of the 36 Sprint Cup races in this car. He's going to be at Indianapolis, run the 500 for Richard Petty. Long-time collaboration between the Pettys and the Andrettis, culminating in the King's first trip to Indianapolis in the month of May as a car owner.
And it won't be the first time that he's driven for Richard Petty. In fact, John has a pole here back in 1999, and I'm going to get a confirmation. I think that was driving for Petty Enterprises, and they're shaking their head up and down that it was.
Clint Bowyer, you know, every time you look at the point standings, see Clint Bowyer in the top 5, you go, now how did he get up there? But he has been so steady and so consistent. Probably the one bright spot for Richard Childress as far as the standings are concerned, and what a job they've done with this 33 team, which was a brand new team this season. And right now Bowyer is 36th on the big board.
And I just think a lot of the preseason comments about not even picking Clint Bowyer to make the chase because of this brand new team, I think it gave him, Shane Wilson, that group, just more incentive to go out and prove the media wrong. And I've got to say, I'm not too proud to admit that I didn't think that they would be a contender this year, not because of Clint Bowyer, not because of Shane Wilson.
Whoa.
Boy, he's not. I think he'll be coming back to the garage area there. There's Shane Wilson, the crew chief. But
getting into 3, guys.
I just think because of adding that 4th team that I felt like it was going to take a while for everything to kind of come together.
It's amazing to me how just a new combination. I think about Matt Kenseth and his crew chief, Blickensturfer, how they came together and won 2 races back right off the bat. Or you take Shane Wilson and Bowyer, they come together and they run really good for a few races. I tell you, that adrenaline and that doing good and something new and something different, that'll carry you for a little while. But at some point in time, you know, you got to start backing up those results, not just running off of adrenaline and being challenged by the media and other things.
Darian Grubb and Tony Stewart, you know, they've come out of the box strong.
But I think it's fair to ask with Clint Bowyer, how many years does he have to prove himself before people realize he's a championship contender year in and year out? You know, he's there.
Boy, Darrell, these cars right now off turn 4, everybody, they've got their hands full, and I think it's coming from the fact of getting that. You heard Dale Earnhardt Jr. talk about his cars turning better than it's ever turned here. They've worked so hard on getting the cars to turn that maybe they've given up a little rear grip, and that's what we're seeing off turn 4.
Okay, and also think about where's the sun right now. The sun is now going over here toward the west, and it's starting to beam down on turn 3 and 4. And we're not getting quite as much direct sunlight on 1 and 2, so that hot sun beaming down on that corner really lights her up.
The ambient temperature not quite 70 degrees, but this sun will heat up that asphalt. Mark Martin is quickest so far. X-Men Origins Wolverine premieres May 1st. In a theater near you. Well, Mark Martin has really laid down the gauntlet. He just lowered his fastest time of this session to a 27:43. His and everybody's fastest lap of the day. Here's Brian Vickers, just laid down a 27:58. Fastest Toyota in town. As we have a look at Greg Biffle. Excuse me, Matt Kenseth, who is 35th overall. Greg Biffle is the fastest Ford.
Yeah, you will. You'll see these times continue to drop here at the end of this session. Everybody's getting serious now.
Yeah, we've got about 32 minutes left in this practice session. This is final practice. We'll have qualifying, and then these guys will be able to put the car in the garage area. It's not a full impound. They'll be able to work on them prior to the race, but no more track time.
Regan Smith now 4th, 27:70.
Well, he's a sleeper.
The Denver mattress car.
Yeah. You've been waiting all day to say that, hadn't you?
I had that one earlier, but they cut me off, so I thought I'd get it in before they did this time.
And you know, this team operates out of Denver, Colorado, so they don't have that long of a trip here to come to Phoenix. Talked to Jay Guy, the crew chief. This is a brand new race car, and they spent several days at Pikes Peak International Raceway, where we used to run the Nationwide Series, testing this car and shaking it down.
Yeah, I think they've been testing a lot there.
They have.
He just backed up his 70 with an 87. Now, on a lot of these practice runs, the second lap has been quicker. Will we see that later today in qualifying?
Boy, you just never know, Mike. When you get ready to go qualify, you leave pit road over here, you drive it like you stole it. And sometime when you're just practicing, you'll leave the pit road over there. You'll come up on the back straightaway, come up to speed, and not hustle the car quite as much. That's why sometimes you'll see a better second lap. I got to believe with sticker tires, pumped up, taped up, jacked up, that first lap's probably going to be your best shot.
Okay.
But I do believe we'll see most of these cars, whether you're a top 35 guy or a go homer. I think most of them will probably run that second lap unless it just gets evil down in turn 1 and 2.
Yeah, I mean, on a 1 mile racetrack flat like this, you can always pick up. If you happen to miss your marks a little bit, might pick up a little bit on the second lap. But I really think most guys gear up to run, get that one in, get that good one in, and then maybe try to make the second one a little better.
Tony Raines picks up. He is 20th overall, and he is right now 6th on the go or go home list, which is the important list as far as he's concerned. The Quality Concrete Dodge trying to make it into the show.
I don't think that's a fluke because, I mean, he was actually right up in the middle of the pack in that first practice session earlier.
He was there. You're right. He is the 4th quickest Dodge right now behind Stremme, Sorensen, and this man, Sam Hornish.
You know, we talked about Robbie Gordon getting an open wheel win here. Sam Hornish got his very first career IndyCar Series win here at Phoenix several years ago. Right now, he's 19th quickest in this 77 car, just starting this run here. That's actually the fastest run that he's had so far.
Kyle Busch just picked it up. Kyle goes into the top 5, 4th fastest at a 27.68.
Mark's got that 10th cushion that he's had like the last 3 or 4 weeks as far as speed goes. He's a 10th quicker than everybody else, and he's gone into qualifying that way about 3 or 4 weeks now.
Yeah, Darrell, it's almost a 10th and a half, actually, yeah.
Sam's car looks as good as any. That car was not the least bit loose, wasn't wobbling, bobbling. And he's 19th on the board right now.
I think he had a pretty good run here last year, if I remember right.
He did have a decent run here. You know, we actually have David Stremme on our trackside show, and one of the things that I'm anxious to ask David Stremme as we watch Jimmy Johnson start another run, it just appears that maybe for the very first time in the history of Penske's Sprint Cup Series operation of having more than one team, multi-car team, that the 3 teams are really working together and supporting one another.
Good point.
You know, Kurt told us that they brought in a lot of people from other teams that lost their jobs. They brought in some pretty good ones, by the way.
Kyle Busch's second lap is quicker. He's now jumped up to 3rd. That's right. The fan vote is back for the All-Star race. So you want to be a participant. Fastest man on the board is with Dick Berggren.
And that would be Mark Martin. The question is, though, as fast as you are right now in the heat, what it all comes down to tomorrow night is how this car is going to behave in the cool of the evening. How much translation is there?
Oh, no, you know, that's qualifying trim anyway. And this Kellogg's CarQuest 5 Chevy's been fast Q trim a lot this year. So, and there's still an hour to go or half hour to go, and people will pick up. Bottom line is we're fast. The car's good in race trim. It's not the best car here, but it's the first time I've been happy with the car this year in practice before the race. So it'll be the first time they haven't made large changes, setup changes for the race on race day morning. So I told them not just put it back like that. You know, that one run we had. I really like it.
Now, we remember last year when Mark Martin was happy with the way the car was at this track for this event, and he darn near won it. Had it not been for an errant pit stop, he would have been in victory lane.
Thanks, Dick. Here's a look at Mark Martin's career at Phoenix. More races than anyone. 9 top 5s, 682 laps led.
You know, just some guys come along every now and then. Harry Gant comes to mind. That age is not a factor. They just seem to actually, you know, Mark's as good a driver today, maybe better than he was 10, 15 years ago.
Sure.
And every now and then there's guys that can just keep that up right till they decide they don't want to do it anymore.
And you know, Darrell, the thing that amazes me the most about Mark, he seems like he has continued to adapt to an ever-changing sport of the way these cars have driven. You know, you look at the changes even the old car went through, and now to this new car, and this is a guy that ran a limited schedule last year. It's like he's adapted to the way these things feel and the way these things drive.
I believe a driver like Mark, who's been around as long as he has, no disrespect, this car reminds these drivers, I think, some of the guys who've been around a long time, of the cars of the past. This car is almost like Back to the Future. It's got a lot of the same characteristics that the cars back in the day had. They don't like to turn, they don't like to be rushed, they don't like to be hurried, and I think Mark probably realizes that as much as anybody.
Denny Hamlin just ran 2 laps, the first of which was the 3rd fastest lap of the day. Hamlin's 2nd lap moved him up to 2nd on the board. So look at Denny and his March of Dimes helmet.
And we were just riding with Casey Kane in the 9 car. Get a feeling that maybe Kenny Francis and that group, they hadn't went to qualifying trim yet because they're 43rd quickest. They've run a total of 26 laps, but time's winding down. If you're going to make a practice qualifying run, it's going to have to be pretty quick here.
As he went off turn 2 there, you could see in the in-car, we're down in 3 now, but you can see in the in-car where those cars are all been scraping the wall off the 2 over there. And a car gets up there, and man, you just wish you had about 2 more feet. And the unfortunate thing is you don't.
But just think about it. Wasn't many years ago you had several feet less than you have over there. They've actually moved that wall out.
Used to clip the wall. You see it coming up right there. We just went past it. And they moved that out about 10 feet. And we used to clip that wall. I mean, you wasn't running good here if you didn't clip that wall coming out of turn 2.
The wall was there because that was the re-entry portion of the outfield road race course that was part of the oval here at Phoenix. They used to run sports car races here as well, and no longer. Or at least no longer with that configuration.
Yeah, just a little loose off of 4 there.
Carl Edwards right now is 17th quickest in this 99 car. Marcos Ambrose jumps up there to 2nd quickest in that 47 car, right behind Mark Martin.
How about that?
27.55 for Marcos.
And Mark still got a 10th in the bank. Mark says, come on, boys.
All right, now here's the qualifying pass Kurt Busch told us about. And let's see if he can move up from 28th right now. But that was 28th in race trim. This is his first opportunity to make a run in. Have you heard that saying a lot? Q trim?
It just that started when Montoya came over here.
Okay.
He was talking about one time they were on the radio and I didn't understand a word he was saying, but he was talking about Q trim. And they were in the queue line. And I said, what does all that mean? I never heard that before.
Well, I understand we're in the queue because in England that means you're in line. You're on line. But Q trim for qualifying trim, that's.
And the other thing that I hear now that I didn't used to hear is the car's got good speed in it. I never heard that before.
No, unless we were talking about Scott Speed's car.
Yeah, but the car's really got good speed.
Speaking of pretty good speed, it wasn't pretty, but Kurt Busch's first lap, and it was ugly off of turn 4, puts him 6th quickest at a 27.60. We've been seeing some cars pick up on lap 2 a lot straighter off of turn 4. Let's see if he can pick it up.
Nope.
Actually slows down about a 1/2 tenth, but it was ugly that first lap, but it was pretty quick.
Center, loose off, straight tight rolling through the center.
I'll go along with the loose off.
Fast.
Here are the cars that must qualify on time, and you can kind of divide them up into a few categories. The bottom 3 here have not practiced competitively at all. Jeremy Mayfield has been a little bit hit or miss. The bubble battle is probably going to be right here, Sterling Marlin and Todd Bodine, because everybody above Todd has run some pretty quick laps among the entire group at one time or another in this session.
Well, I would say Dexter Bean, though. Now, he's picked it up. He's at a 28.83.
Yep.
So he has picked up a skosh, but he'd have to pick up about 7 tenths to be up to Jeremy Mayfield.
But, Mike, that difference right now between Sterling Marlin and Todd Bodine, just right at 1/100th of a second.
Oh, yeah, that'll be a battle. Now, here's Brandon Ash, the West Coast driver in the 02, and Trevor Boyes from Canada in the 06. And Matt Kenseth trying to find a way by.
What in the world have I run into? is the caution out?
I just wonder if Matt was on a practice qualifying run. If he was, he's not going to be a happy man.
Was is the operative word. Now, Tony Raines has shown some flashes here of being able to put this number 73 in the show. Right now, he is 7th of the go homers.
And again, he's been fast all day long. Fast enough to qualify.
Right.
Crash.
I thought he said crash, but I'm not sure he didn't rake the right side of the car up. I thought when we had that quick shot that it looked like the right side might be rubbed up a little bit, but I'm not totally sure just yet. No, she's clean, so I guess he meant he was about to crash.
Todd Bodine right now in the 64 car. We were just talking about him. He's just right there on the cusp, but needing to run a little bit quicker if he definitely wants to race tomorrow night.
That's the best we've been right there.
That's the good news for Brandon Ash. The bad news is he's about a second off being able to qualify with that 02.
Darrell, we'll be able to tell once we get into qualifying, but I just feel like if the track's going to cool down, you better at least, even right now, maybe run just inside the 27-second bracket to feel nice and safe that you've got a quick enough race car.
Yeah, because you got Tony Raines up there well, he's at a 27.99. So yeah, I think you're right, Larry. Anything in the 27 might be safe.
Now Sterling Marlin is less than a tenth off of what Todd Bodine has run. And that's likely to be the bubble battle right there based on practice.
Looks like a pretty good lap for Sterling. I was watching the car.
It just, yeah, he picked it up to 28th quickest to a 27.89. I think if you can run that right now, we know everybody's probably going to pick up. You just got to be one of those cars that picks up as well.
Yeah, it looked like a pretty sporty lap for the
Sterling.
09.
Yeah, makes him 6th of the go homers. Now here's Jeremy Mayfield, and Jeremy does need a pickup. He's at 28.19 in the big red Toyota.
I talked to Tony Furr, the crew chief for this car, and they made a change since Texas. They made a change from where they're getting their engines. They're now getting them from Joey Arrington, and said definitely the chassis dynos showed that they have made a vast improvement in horsepower to rear wheels. But they've definitely got to pick it up a little bit.
Matt?
And the 82 of Scott Speed has refired his engine, going to go back out. They've let this car cool down. They made a change in the nose weight. It actually hurt the car. It made it push on both ends of the racetrack. Especially bad, Scott said, down in 3 and 4. It slowed him down about a tenth from the earlier session. So they let it cool down. They also made a camber adjustment up in the left front and right front. He's heading out now just to see what that will do on the stopwatch.
All right, he is 3rd among the go homers right now, and you saw Ryan Newman also coming back out. Dale Jr. is 15th overall with a 27.62. That's only 2/10 off Mark Martin, who has the fastest lap of the session.
And when he ran that 62, we thought it was pretty sporty. It's just these cars are really picking up as we're getting in the closing minutes of this practice session. But I think, like Darrell said, especially like down in turn 1 and 2, it's starting to lose a little bit of the sun, starting to gain a little bit of grip.
Junior jumps to 7th.
Doesn't take much, I tell you. That track cools down a little bit. Put new tires on, get a little grip in the tires, get a little grip in the track, and man, what'd you do to my car?
AJ Allmendinger just jumped up to 9th. He is the fastest Dodge. And here comes the Rocket.
You know, the amazing rebound that this team has made, when you think about it, after Atlanta, after a lot of bad luck in the first 3 or 4 races, they were 32nd in the points. They have now moved up to 17th, but like we were talking on our conference call the other day, it's not about where you're at in the points. It's about being in the top 12. It's not how far you're behind the leader. And right now, this group's only 92 points out of the top 12, with a long way to go to Richmond.
All right, Newman jumps up to 12th on his first lap. Let's see if this second lap, as many of them have been, is quicker for Newman, as Scott Speed is also out on a mock qualifying run.
You know, I think, and you think about Tony Gibson, Ryan's crew chief. They got a lot. He's worked with a lot of different drivers. He hadn't really had one driver to focus on like he does now. So I think that'll help this team as they go forward as well.
Second lap not quite as quick, so Ryan is 12th for the moment. Dale Jr. up to 9th with that run. But Mark Martin still paces this practice. There's a new sheriff in town. But first, NASCAR Sprint Cup final practice from Phoenix is brought to you by Toyota. For the latest Toyota racing information, visit toyotaracing.com. Toyota, moving forward. Paulo Montoya has just ripped off a lap of 27.29, and he yards Mark Martin by more than 1/10 of a second.
Yeah, no longer Mark had that 10.5 cushion. Now Montoya has that 10.5 cushion. That's a pretty sporty lap, 27.29.
How about David Reagan up for 4th?
I just like the way these Earnhardt Ganassi cars are running this weekend, man. I've been watching Martin, and he's fast, and here's Juan Pablo at the top of the sheet. They got it going on today.
Reed Sorensen, 29th in the auto value, number 43.
We only have one Dodge in the top 15 right now. Actually, we got a second one. Casey Kane just jumped up in there. He's third quickest in the 9 car.
Nope.
But I was going to say A.J. Allmendinger was 14th.
Reed Sorensen 4th with that lap. Now there's 2 cars we haven't seen on the left side of the board all day. Reed Sorensen and Casey Kane, and suddenly they are 3rd and 4th when taped up in qualifying trim.
But that, you know, that's good news for those guys. Obviously,
yes.
All the things you've been working on during practice, the 2 hours earlier and an hour and a half now, put it all together and see what we got.
But I tell you, I really believe, just looking at the laps run, that Casey Kane right here and Kenny Francis, they spent a lot of time working on long race runs most of these 2 practices.
Casey Mears up to 6th, and here is David Reagan, who is 7th.
He's just starting another run.
David Rudiman up to 5th place.
I think it's a combination of things. Everybody's getting their qualifying packages put together, but then the track's got to be cooling down some.
Yes, and Jamie McMurray just jumped up to 3rd.
Yeah, that's redemption. After losing most of the first practice session to the turn 3 wall, McMurray now in 3rd place.
Well, if you think about the guys that did the tire test, and that's always an advantage. I don't care what they say. You got Juan up there, and who's his teammate? Martin. You got Jamie up there, who did the tire test. I think was Reed one of the others.
Well, actually, A.J. Allmendinger did the other part of it, and his 2 teammates are 4th and 5th right now.
So good information passed down to teammates.
David Reagan just climbed to 5th. And a little smoke from Joey Logano's car.
The old Jake break.
21st. I thought they made a rule.
They must not made a good enough one.
Right now, Joey's 21st, as you mentioned, Mike, and that's another one of the teams that did the tire test back here in January.
That could have been some tire smoke, but it looked like, you know, that black smoke we saw at Martinsville all day.
Black smoke, black helicopters.
They tried to trick me. They painted some of them red. I knew better.
Bergie.
In April 2007, Jeff Gordon won the pole for the spring race here in Phoenix, and he went on to win the race after that. If he's going to repeat, he's going to have a lot more speed than he has shown so far. Gordon right now, 26th on the serial order. They just fired 4 fresh tires on it. He's going to see how fast she'll go. It's got a long, long way to go. Car loose on exit and not handling well in the middle either.
You know, Mike, I just don't know that we had enough time at Texas to make the statement after he won that race. That puts him up to 2nd quickest right there behind Montoya, and in fact, it's only 1/100th slower. But with that win, now Jeff Gordon is only 1 win behind tying Carol Yarborough and 2 behind tying our old buddy Darrell Waltrip and Bobby Allison.
I love it when people break records.
Great job, guys. I know it's been a long day.
Mine.
Things changed quickly in the final minutes of practice. Mark Martin has led the whole way. Now he's not even in the top 5. Jimmy Johnson to the top of the board. Tony Stewart up to 4th. And that kicks Marky Mark back to 6th place. on the big board. Jamie Mack to 7th, Casey Kane, David Reagan, Matt Kenseth.
We got Carl Edwards just reached up there and got a plug check where the engine guy can take a look at the spark plugs. Right now he's 16th quickest, but yeah, we've got 3
on the plug check.
10-4 on the plug check.
Bob Osborne is crew chief, but yeah, we've got 3 Roush Fenway cars right there just inside the top 10.
And see, that'll help the engine tuner. Now, you can't bring the car back in. You just made your run. Bring that car back in, and the engine tuner say, I got a little more I can give you. I got a little bit more. I can knock a little more timing in it. Maybe take a jet out. She'll be a little sharper going to qualify.
Boy, Allmendinger looks like he's taking bites getting into that corner instead of a smooth arc and entry.
He's juking on the wheel.
See if he picks up from 22nd.
He's got issues.
Yeah.
Locking up the left front. He's chopping wood. He's got some stuff going on.
Well, the best thing he's got going on, Darrell, is he's in the show. He doesn't have to worry about trying to make it in on time.
You know, we normally see this at like a half-mile track like Martinsville or Bristol, but right now Jimmy Johnson is the quickest at a 27.22. Scott Speed is 35th at a 27.72. 0.5 of a second separating the top 35 right now.
And remember when we started this session, who was on top of the board? Scott Speed.
That's right.
Yeah.
He led the group for a long time.
Regan Smith back up into the top 10 in 7th. And he is by a wide margin now the fastest go or go homer. And the vice kind of tightens on that group. I still think it's going to be Todd Bodine, Sterling Marlin, Tony Raines for that final qualifying spot between those 3.
And even though they're stacked right on top of each other, their time is pretty close to each other too.
Yeah, well,
Sam Hornish 30th right now.
All those go or go homer guys except for Smith and Nemechek, all the rest of them are right over here in a group, all just together, separated by 1 or 2 guys.
A couple of them right there. Brandon Ash in the 02, Todd Bodine in the 64. Brandon's made a few races over the last 2 or 3 years. Always tries to attempt to qualify here, and when we go to the road course out in Infineon in Sonoma.
Now we will, before we leave the air today, update you on the go or go homers as the flags are out to end the session, and Jimmy Johnson will win this practice. Final practice for tomorrow night's Subway Fresh Fit 500. So let's have a look at the go or go home group. And that is in order of practice speed. Now 5 of them go home, which would put the break point at Sterling Marlin. But Todd Bodine is an 83. Marlin is an 89. Raines is a 99. And Mayfield an 05. So among that group, things are pretty close.
Look at Jeremy Mayfield. He qualified for the very first 2 races of the year. He got in at Martinsville when we had the rains move in, but they have not qualified for a race since.
Jeff Gordon within 8/100ths of his teammate Jimmy Johnson.
Yeah, it's one thing to go out there to qualify to go for the pole. It's something else to go out there and qualify and go home.
Yeah,
big difference.
Nice sprinkling of makes in there. Absent is Toyota. Rudeman is the fastest Toyota. He is 13th with Vickers 15th and Kyle Busch 16th.
It's going to be a tight qualifying session, I think, for who sits on the pole and for who goes or goes home.
Absolutely. I mean, the top 10 cars in this session are covered by less than, well, it's about a quarter second.
Yeah.
So there's a look at them. We will have Nationwide Series qualifying coming up, and then NASCAR Sprint Cup qualifying to follow. So lots more NASCAR for you on Speed this afternoon. So practice is complete. Jimmy Johnson wins the final practice here in Phoenix.